Welcome to God's Lore Deep Dive, a channel that delves into the power, battle, and untold secrets of mythology. Today, we're not just retelling a story, but embarking on a 15-minute journey that explores the roots of the war that shaped the entire world of Greek gods, the Titanomachy. 1. The roots of God of War, the era of the sky and the sickle of treachery. But before we reach the thunderous roar of Zeus, we must rewind to the primal age, where everything began with a tyrannical king and an act of devastating betrayal. This is the story of Uranus and Cronus. In the initial age of chaos, everything originated from chaos, the boundless void. From chaos, the primordial entities were born, including Gaia, Mother Earth, the source of life and power for all things. From Gaia, or through her union with chaos, came Uranus, the personification of the sky. Uranus became the first cosmic king, an entity wielding the power of cosmic control, extending his domain over all space and the nascent order. Under the rule of Uranus and Gaia, the first great generation of Titans was born. Among them was one named Cronus, the god of time and harvest, yet one who concealed colossal ambition. However, Uranus was not a benevolent king. He was a tyrant. Uranus despised some of his children, especially the monstrous, terrifying, but immensely powerful creatures like the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants, genius smiths, and the Centimanes, 100-handed monsters. Due to their ugliness and his fear that they might threaten his power, Uranus forced these children back, eternally imprisoning them deep within the earth, in Tartarus. This act caused Gaia, Mother Earth, immense pain and fury. She called upon her Titan children to revolt. But only Cronus possessed enough courage, or rather, enough ruthlessness and ambition, to accept the task. This was the first war, a brief but fateful conflict. Gaia fashioned a sickle out of adamantine, the hardest metal in mythology. Cronus, along with his Titan siblings, except Oceanus, ambushed Uranus when he came down to sleep with Gaia. This was not a direct battle between elemental power and the power of time, but a strategic betrayal. Cronus used the sickle to castrate Uranus. The power of the sky was brutally stripped away, and from his blood that fell to the earth, the Gigantes and the Erinyes, the avenging goddesses, were born. Cronus became the new cosmic king. The intriguing point here is the difference in roles. Uranus was a cruel, dictatorial god, but Cronus, his overthrower, was also not righteous. Cronus achieved kingship through violence and surprise, not by fairness or superior strength. And this is the very point where Cronus would later fail against his son, Zeus. For if Cronus only needed sudden violence to defeat Uranus, Zeus would later need strategy, allies, specialized weapons, and a long war, the Titanomachy, to vanquish Cronus. The overthrow ended the era of Uranus and ushered in the golden age of the Titans. But the fear of an overthrown king was deeply ingrained in Cronus's mind. 2. The Golden Age and the prophecy of devouring, Cronus's reign. Following the devastating act of betrayal, Cronus ascended the throne, ushering in the Golden Age, a time supposedly of peace and prosperity under the rule of him and his Titan queen, Rhea. Cronus was now the king of the cosmos, the wielder of the power of time, shaping the cycles of the seasons and life. Cronus's power was not merely physical, he could control the flow of time and was a formidable strategist. However, the shadow of betrayal and power never left him. Despite defeating his father, Cronus remained haunted by the terrible prophecy from Uranus and Gaia. He, too, would be overthrown by one of his own children. This fear transformed Cronus, the rebel, into a tyrant no less tyrannical than his father. To avert his destiny, Cronus committed an atrocious act. He devoured all of his newborn children. We are speaking of the 6 deities who would later become the pillars of Mount Olympus: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and finally, Zeus. One by one, as soon as they were born, each child was swallowed by the Titan king. Rhea, the queen and mother, witnessed this sight, filled with despair and agony. She had to endure a god who wielded the power of time, who controlled fate yet was ruined by his own fear of time. By the time she gave birth to her last child, Zeus, Rhea decided she had to end this brutal cycle. This was the second betrayal that would change Greek mythology. Rhea secretly fled to Crete, where she gave birth to Zeus in the Dictaean cave and entrusted the child to the care of the nymphs. To deceive Cronus, Rhea wrapped a large stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to the Titan king. Blinded by fear, Cronus swallowed the stone, believing he had escaped the destined curse. From there, Zeus grew up in secret, not on the magnificent Mount Olympus, but beneath the ground of Crete. He was nourished by the milk of the goat Amalthea and protected by the Curetes warriors, who clashed their spears against their shields to drown out the gods' cries. Zeus's escape was not just a singular act, it was the birth of a warrior and a strategist. As he grew, Zeus realized his sole purpose, to free his siblings and overthrow his father, a journey Cronus never foresaw. With his power over time, Cronus should have seen the future. But his fear caused him to miss the most crucial details. Zeus had survived, and the greatest war was about to erupt. 3. Titanomachy, the 10-year War of the Gods. Upon reaching adulthood, Zeus returned to the world of mortals, not to rule, but to liberate. With the help of the goddess Métis, wisdom, Zeus found a way to infiltrate the Titan court. Métis gave Zeus a divine potion. Cronus, who still believed he had swallowed all his children, drank the concoction. The consequences were devastating. Cronus vomited up all the children he had swallowed, who were now fully grown and filled with deep resentment. The battle lines were drawn. The mythological world was split into two factions. The Titan faction, led by Cronus and powerful titans like Atlas, Crius, and Zeus. The Titan faction occupied Mount Othrys with massive numbers and primal strength. The Olympus faction, led by Zeus along with his siblings Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter. The Olympus faction was based at the majestic Mount Olympus. The war lasted 10 years in a stalemate. The Titan faction was strong in primal power and numbers. The Olympus faction excelled in wisdom and specialized weapons. This is the key highlight for our deep dive channel. Zeus knew that to win, he had to do what Cronus had failed to do: seek out oppressed allies. He descended to Tartarus and freed the Cyclopes and the Centimanes, the hundred-handed giants, whom Uranus had imprisoned. This act not only gave Zeus more warriors but also yielded the three most powerful weapons in mythological history: the lightning bolt for Zeus, the trident for Poseidon, and the helm of darkness for Hades. The Titanomachy erupted. Throughout the initial stalemate phase, the Titans used their colossal physical strength against the agility and organization of the younger gods. But the turning point occurred when the Centimanes entered the fray. With 100 hands, these creatures could pick up and hurl hundreds of mountains at once. The Olympus faction used the Centimanes as colossal, destructive siege engines, shaking the ground and breaking the Titan defense line. Zeus, riding on the back of the Centimanes, continuously hurled his lightning bolts into the Titan formation, melting rock and sea, causing unprecedented chaos. Against the combined might of the Olympian gods and their specialized weaponry, the Titan faction began to crumble. Cronus was defeated by his own son, Zeus. Although Cronus was the god of time, he could not withstand the explosive force of Zeus's lightning and strategy. Cronus and most of the Titans were banished to the deep abyss of Tartarus, where they were eternally chained in darkness. However, one Titan suffered a more terrible punishment: Atlas, Cronus's strongest general. Zeus forced Atlas to bear the entire sky on his shoulders at the western edge of the world, a punishment symbolizing the eternal burden of the cosmos. 4. The final challenge: the war against Typhoeus. Although the Titans had been defeated, true peace had not yet come to the world. Gaia, Mother Earth, was still furious that Zeus had imprisoned her children. To avenge the defeat of the Titans, she gave birth to Typhoeus, the father of all monsters. Typhoeus was not a Titan, he was a primordial entity, a monster of chaos with terrifying strength and a hideous appearance. So tall his head touched the stars, his body was human, but from the waist down he was a colossal mass of serpents, his eyes emitted fire, and he was the embodiment of all storms and natural disasters. The appearance of Typhoeus caused unprecedented terror. Even the Olympian gods fled, transforming into various animal forms and hiding in Egypt. The war of Zeus versus Typhoeus was a duel that determined the fate of the gods. This time, Zeus could not rely on tactics or allies. This was a battle of pure will and power. Zeus bravely confronted the monster, continuously unleashing his lightning bolts. But Typhoeus was too powerful. In a dark moment, Typhoeus overpowered Zeus, severed his sinews and tendons, stripped him of his strength, and imprisoned him in a cave. The world descended into chaos. However, Hermes and Egipan bravely infiltrated the cave and restored Zeus's strength. Once his power was recovered, Zeus returned with absolute fury. He chased Typhoeus across the world, relentlessly hurling lightning bolts. Finally, Zeus threw the massive Mount Etna in Sicily on top of Typhoeus. The monster was buried beneath the volcano, and whenever Typhoeus attempts to break free, Etna erupts. The victory over Typhoeus was the absolute moment of affirmation for Zeus's power. He not only defeated those of the old lineage but also vanquished the chaotic power of nature itself. 5. The legacy of the war and absolute power. After defeating Typhoeus, Zeus and his siblings established an eternal order. This victory was not merely a military triumph, but the formation of a new power structure, where authority was divided. Zeus held the sky, Poseidon the ocean, and Hades the underworld. The era of the young gods, the Olympians, officially began. What allowed Zeus to succeed where Cronus and Uranus had failed? The answer lies in the unique combination of weaponry, strategy, and authority. Many think Zeus's lightning bolt is just ordinary lightning, but that is a severe mistake. The lightning bolt is a mass destruction weapon forged by the Cyclopes. Zeus's lightning is a source of pure creative and destructive energy, capable of melting stone, vaporizing the sea, and reshaping geography. Secondly, there is Zeus's strategy and leadership skills. Zeus was the first god to know how to unify different forces, from his divine siblings to outcast monsters like the Cyclopes and the Centaurs. This alliance demonstrates superior political intelligence and tactics, transforming a small group of young gods into a victorious army. He was not just a warrior, he was a great organizer. Finally, and most importantly, is divine authority. After defeating not only the Titans but also Typhoeus, Zeus possessed not just physical strength but absolute authority. This authority allows him to define and enforce laws for both gods and mortals. Zeus's role is righteous, the liberator of the gods, but his actions are often wicked, the brutality towards the Titans, his philandering. This complexity makes Greek mythology so captivating. To truly appreciate Zeus's power, we must put him in a global context. When comparing Zeus with Odin of Norse mythology, both are the supreme all-father figures. However, Zeus triumphs through raw power and elemental authority via the lightning bolt. Conversely, Odin wins through wisdom, self-sacrifice, and magic/knowledge. Zeus's power is an explosion of energy, while Odin's power is an accumulation of intellect. When compared with the Jade Emperor of Chinese mythology, the difference is even clearer. Zeus is the victor of a power struggle, a god of violence and change. The Jade Emperor is the establisher of order, the divine bureaucracy. The Jade Emperor's power leans towards celestial administration and law rather than warfare, whereas Zeus is the embodiment of war and elemental power. The story of Zeus and the Titanomachy has dominated modern media, from films like Clash of the Titans and Immortals to video games like God of War. And that is the entire story of the Titanomachy, not just a war, but a deep dive event into the nature of power, betrayal, and divine wartime strategy. This story laid the foundation for everything we know about Mount Olympus. Don't forget to subscribe to the God's Lore Deep Dive channel so you don't miss our next video, Ragnarök Full Saga, Norse mythology's final war, where we will see if Odin's wisdom can triumph over the chaos of the Norse world. See you in the next great war.